Hi everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the From Nothing to Scratch podcast. Today we've got Andrew Chadwick from Elite Personal Training Academy. We're going to be talking about golf fitness, a bit of maybe nutrition as well, obviously Andrew being the expert here. And we've got a few questions from yourselves that we're going to try and answer. And yeah, so dive in really.
Let's do it.
So we were just talking about kind of the awareness, obviously just before this, maybe a good point to start with, and why we're doing this is the awareness of golf fitness now.
Yeah.
It's become a much bigger thing, right?
Yeah, it's huge. And I think in terms of when we look at over the years, and I think we'd say over the decades, that golf has always been one of those sports that was seen as like a gentlemanly thing. It wasn't seen as something that you were an athlete to play. And you've got people like John Daly in the 90s that are hitting the ball 300 yards consistently, but the bloke's hitting off beer cans and he's smoking cigars and drinking beer on the way around. Like, it doesn't portray that golf is a fitness related sport. And then you've got the kind of upcoming Tiger Woods. He's obviously athletic, he's lean, and then he goes through this period of time where he's building up his body and he's getting stronger. And you see how the game develops because of him. And I think every podcast that will ever be done that talks about golf fitness through the ages will always talk about Tiger Woods, because he was the pioneer of fitness in golf. Now, it's only elevated more with players like Rory, Dustin, Brooks, hitting the ball super long distances, but they're all actively talking about how strong they are, how flexible they are. So we look at the driving yardages, and if we went back to the 80s, I think the average driving distance was something like 250, 260 yards. Whereas now you fast forward 40 years and I think the average is probably 310 plus.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we've clearly seen that the correlation between fitness and golf has merged to the point where it's become an attractive sport in distances.
Yeah, because I mean that golf fitness as well doesn't just necessarily mean like weights and stuff, right? It's that, like you said, it's flexibility and things like that as well. You know,
Yeah,
it's not just
definitely.
strength.
I think a lot of the time, I think there's two ends of the curve. We've got the flexibility side and we've got the all-out strength side. And I think from a certain standpoint, and it's very kind of dependent on the person, some people will be like, okay, I'm flexible, so I need to go in the gym and I just need to work on my strength. And then you'll have some people that are solely working on their strength, but they need to be working on their flexibility. Now, it's finding that kind of balance between the two, that you have your strength and your flexibility, which will increase your speed. Obviously, technique comes into it as well. But if we've got strength and flexibility together, we're going to have a combination that's just going to create more power and more distance. But we're also going to find, and I don't want it to be just solely about distance when we talk about it, that people are going to feel better when they play, that they're actually going to feel more confident in themselves to hit shots.
Yeah,
Because I think that's a big thing that people miss out. Like, they
yeah,
only ever see training for distance. And I've worked with elite athletes and I've worked with general public, and it's surprising to me how many people, when they do from the general public like background, when they do some flexibility work, that actually they come off the course and they don't have the aches and pains. They don't sit down in the bar and have their 19th hole beer and all of a sudden they're starting to feel that the hips and their back are seizing up. So it's really nice to see that it's not just about distance, it's about overall health as well within golf.
yeah. I mean, out watching the match, you know, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, obviously having the microphones on us, I can see the smile there. You're thinking what I'm going to say, but Phil Mickelson was just out of breath,
Yeah,
like constantly, and you think, obviously he's a great player. I can't say anything to that, but is that can't be helping, you know, getting to the ball and being out of breath and your mental focus. You're not going to be 100% when you, especially when you get into the top of the game. You want it to be 100%, right?
yeah, 100%. It's very interesting to a lot of people how they'll only ever look at their strength And yes, okay, we're talking about flexibility as well, but what they don't realize is that when their kind of physical state is altered, their emotional state becomes altered as well. So like you said a minute ago about how Phil Mickelson's getting to the ball and he's out of breath, all of a sudden he's psychologically thinking, I'm out of breath, I'm out of shape, am I going to hit the best shot possible? Am I tired? Am I weak? How am I going to perform? And that starts to play on the mind. So all of a sudden it's, okay, can I hit that shot or not? Do I need to take a different shot? Rather than standing over the ball and being 100% confident that that's the shot you can hit, everything else starts to come into play as well.
And I suppose that then this is all influenced into the nutrition, like you say, when it's not just strength, like nutrition and being hydrated and things like that. You see the players on the course, you know, I know from my brother being a caddy how much water he's carrying around because they're trying to stay hydrated and making sure the players like fueled and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of amateurs, obviously, it's a bit of a bacon sandwich, you know, in the morning in the UK over here still, isn't it? And then,
Oh, 100%. And I mean, I'm surprised over here that how many people are going around on the golf course and the cart comes round and it's like, oh, do you want a beer? And I'm like, it's 11:30 in the morning. Like, and with what, you're offering beers at 11:30? And the Americans are drinking like in the mid-morning. And I'm like, I fully understand that some people see it as very much a recreational side of things, and they're not exactly taking it to the competitive standard that some people want to be playing at. And I think sometimes we have to look at who we're talking to.
yeah,
But if we're talking about people that are playing in club competitions, they're playing in regional competitions or maybe national competitions at an amateur level before they look at professional stuff, we still need to be thinking like an athlete. And that still encompasses hydration, it still encompasses nutrition, it still encompasses recovery as well.
yeah. How do you think as well when you are, say, training someone, how does that differ? You know, so especially if someone's maybe come from another sport, maybe they're already going to the gym, you know, you're working on different muscle groups, right? And maybe power, or I don't know, how do you kind of structure things?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things you look at as a coach in terms of their training and stuff is with their background, they'll have been trained to a certain level, but it'll be very sport specific for another sport. And if we're going to now try and kind of migrate them into a different sport that's going to use different muscles and different firing patterns, yeah, okay, we want to try and keep them powerful. We want to try and keep them strong. We want to keep that endurance ability within their body, but we've got to try and get the firing sequences a little bit different. So the only, I think the only real big thing that you would probably change in the programming would be the kind of more or less the sequencing of movements.
Right.
So you'd have your power stuff at the start of a session, you'd have your strength stuff second, you move on to more your kind of hypertrophy endurance stuff. And with that stuff, you're going to look a lot more unilateral stuff. You're going to look a lot more lateral work because of the fact that golf is such a offset game. It's not just linear, straightforward, straight back, side to side. It's got that rotational portion as well. So oftentimes it's a case of we'll look at the person's body, find out where their weaknesses are in certain movement patterns, what joints, what issues they've got, whether it's hips or shoulders, and then from there we'll create the program to strengthen those weaker areas while keeping the power side of things there.
Yeah, that's interesting as well, that, because I think that's why as well I wanted to speak to you, because you are looking at things from a golf specific point of view as well. Because like I was speaking to my coach when I was talking about fitness, I was saying like, what do you think I should be maybe asking my fitness coach or anything to do? And he was saying you need to be working on the planes that obviously your golf swing would. So I think being aware of that maybe could be an important thing if you are going to. I think maybe any fitness might help to an extent, but there's obviously going to be more specific things.
Yeah, I think the crossover or potentially the area that we need to look at is that we have kind of health related fitness, but we also have performance related fitness.
Yeah.
Now, health-related fitness is great because it sets a foundation, and I think everyone should have a level of health-related fitness. Where we want to then progress, we have to start looking at the performance-related side, and we've got to look at the explosive power stuff. We've got to look at moving in the way that the sport requires, and it does require us to be strong with rotational speed. We obviously need that speed and obviously that strength as well to be able to produce that power for the golf swing. We also need to be really good at slowing down as well. And a lot of time people are trying to do everything as quick as they can, when oftentimes we need to be able to slow it down as well.
All right.
So when we're talking about their training, everything has to be geared towards what they're good at, but also what they're weak at, because we don't want anything to get stronger to the point where the weaknesses create issues or injuries. And I know that we're going to get onto the subject of core work in a minute, but there's so many different ways of targeting their body that incorporates the core, but incorporates movements specific to golf.
Yeah. Well, since we're almost there, it's one of the questions from Will on Instagram. He asked, how important is core strength? I suppose while we're there, we might as well answer that one.
So the big one that we always talk about with the core is the fact that it's the powerhouse in the golf swing, but it's the powerhouse in our body, in any sport. So whenever we look at developing power, whenever we look at putting that power down or the transfer of energy from the ground to the hips, it's in the legs. So we need leg work. But then to get the power from the hips to the shoulders, we've got that big trunk section that if it isn't strong, if it's not mobile, if it's not able to support the power that we're trying to develop, that we've loaded up in the backswing, we're not going to be able to effectively get that club head back to the ball fast enough or strong enough to be able to hold our position, to be able to hit the shot that we want. So that the core is absolutely essential in a golf swing. It connects the hips to the shoulders, but obviously the shoulders are connected to the arms, which is connected to the club. So that chain, that kinetic chain that we've got, is always going to be from the feet to the hands. So we've got to make sure that everything's connected effectively. Now, I'd never try and ignore the fact that we need leg work as well, or we need arm work in terms of certain movements. But the core is so key to be able to deliver that power into the golf swing. One thing that I'll always kind of touch on real quick with anyone is the fact that we've got 4 areas of the core that we need to be training before we look at the movements. So we've got your transverse abdominis, you've got your internal external obliques that we need to be working on, which is more the rotational stuff. And we've got your rectus abdominis, which is your abs that people can see that they want to just develop. Now, the transverse abdominis is so key because it's able to hold the pelvis stable. So if ever you see a golfer that's got a pelvic tilt and they've got the curve in their lower back, oftentimes it's because of the fact that they're tilting, they can't necessarily stabilize their hips very well. So you need to be able to work on your transverse abdominis and your diaphragm and your pelvic floor to be able to hold that rigid structure, which also helps with posture as well.
Oh, interesting. I'm learning loads here already.
That's good.
It's funny, actually. I think you're reading these questions out because the next one is actually getting onto the back. So someone was asking about actually upper back stretches and exercises. Usually you hear people mentioning about the lower back, but some upper back stretches. I suppose it's hard for you to show if this is a podcast now anyway, but if you have any links or anything like that as well.
Yeah, I can ping you the links over and we can put them in the podcast text underneath. But in terms of back stretches, the main areas we've got to focus on are your lats and your traps. We do also need to be working on your rear delts. So the lats are typically the muscles that attach on the side of the back, and your traps are the ones that run kind of through in between the shoulder blades and just below. Now, I was, again, surprised like yourself, like someone didn't ask about the lower back. But the lower back tends to be the area that is kind of overstressed. But that could be down to hip instability, weakness, poor mobility. But the lower back can also get stressed from above the kind of in and around the traps and the lats, where it's typically where I get pain and issue because it'll transfer down. So when we look at transfer of energy, it can go up, but it can go down in the body. So if we're not only weak or tight in the hips area, we could actually be tight in the upper back as well, which can then transfer down into the lower back. I always get it through my left side, so I have to make sure that I'm spending a lot of time working on my kind of traps and my lats on my lower back, on my upper back, should I say. So stuff like, best way to describe it, if anyone's ever done yoga, you can do a child's pose position where you're on your knees and you're resting on your calves or your shins, sit down onto your heels and reach out as far as you can. That's a great stretch to be doing for your back. You can then obviously pop one hand and kind of thread the needle under the body and get the side of the back and into the back of the shoulder, which is a great one, because again, it's adding that rotation portion, which is what we need. The one thing to look at is that the lower back doesn't necessarily have much mobility in it, the spine doesn't, whereas the thoracic spine has a little bit more. So again, it's still not a lot, but it has a little bit more. So we need to be able to make sure that the separation is there between the lower back and the thoracic spine, which is kind of the middle, that can actually mobilize and move a little bit more than the lower back can.
Right.
But yeah, we can put some links for the videos and stuff for people to work on those stretches.
Yeah, I was going to say at the minute as well, I don't really want to mention what's going on, but obviously the current situation with lockdown, I'm sure we've all heard enough of it. But is there things you think maybe people could be working on? I mean, what comes to my mind is flexibility quite a lot, especially if you're limited with, equipment and things. But
yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things that we can always be better at is flexibility. Unless you're someone that stretches, I don't know, an hour or 2 hours a day, every day for the rest of your life, or where you are in your life, I think flexibility and mobility is something we can always be working on. There's always going to be areas of improvement within that. One thing that I always I'm certainly looking at this point in time is, do you have any imbalances within your body right now? And if you don't know whether you have any imbalances, I'd recommend getting tested, maybe online, virtually, and then having a look at if there's any weak areas, any tight areas that you really need to be focusing on. Because if there is, all of a sudden you can start saying, okay, well, I need to be focusing more, stretching my hips out. This is just an example. But I also need to make sure that I'm doing a lot of single leg work. So whether it's some side lunges, curtsy lunges, lateral lunges, forward lunges, back lunge, reverse lunges. And it's a case of, we can start building a little bit of a program for people based on their test results. And it'll give us a great idea of, actually, if we work on these for 4 to 6 weeks, when hopefully the no names mentioned what's going on starts to get a little bit easier on society and we can go back to the golf course, we actually might find that the movement restrictions we were struggling with pre or during lockdown actually have gone now, because of range of motion is better, or strength in those movement planes is better. Because whenever we look at people and their training, oftentimes they'll do squats or they'll do deadlifts, they'll do a bench press or a chest press or a pull-up or a row, and everything's in that kind of sagittal plane where it's just forwards and backwards, up and down. Whereas, can we get your body moving in side to side movements? Can we get you moving in 45-degree movements rather than just side to side, forwards and backwards? Can we get you changing direction when you're doing a movement? And I think when people start looking at the fact that they're moving in different planes, they start to move better. They'll get out on the golf course or on the range before they go and play, and all of a sudden their swing speed is going to feel so much faster because they're so much more mobile.
Yeah, it's funny actually. I was doing your flexibility video that you sent over, and
Okay.
I was only doing it yesterday, and I didn't realize how much my balance, I felt like, had started to go as well.
Yeah.
So I was doing that and like standing on one leg and thinking, I feel like I've not stood up before. I think starting
It's
to,
strange. It really is strange. Sometimes just simply standing on one leg for 30 seconds, you'll feel a difference between the two legs. And I know you were looking at the hip cars where you're taking the foot over like the imaginary hurdle and
yeah,
opening up the hip. And I'm sure you could feel the difference in one hip to the other, or maybe the ability to rotate further, like greater range of motion. And you'll find those little sticking spots as well in those exercises. So stuff like that is really, really cool, because you start to realize what's stronger, what's weaker, what needs a little more attention with my stretching, with my flexibility, that kind of stuff. And you'll, like I say, you'll go back to the golf course and you'll be better for it.
Yeah. So yeah, there's plenty of things for people to get on with, and also you've got your online courses. So is
Yeah,
that similar
so
sort of thing?
it was, because I've been in the industry for, I'm going to say a while, not as long as some, but been in quite a while. And my journey kind of migrated from just general population through to the sport specific through associations. I'm good friends and gratefully good friends with me and my golf. And I've been very fortunate to work through like a boot camp series with them where we use the super speed sticks for like a case study. And I created a program for the guys that were part of it. And we coupled the super speed stuff with this training program. And what we saw as they were going through that, how important the training was alongside the super speed stuff. So I recreated a case study and I used some of the same subjects and some different. And again, I saw, without using the super speed stuff, I saw a similar increase to the point it was like, right, okay, I've got a program that works. Now can I just keep progressing it, evolving it each time that people improve on it? And what I found so far is just the online stuff. The people that have jumped on it, they've, over the course of the 60 days, or if they've wanted to go a little deeper into their own kind of coaching series, that everything has evolved for them, whether it's their mobility, their flexibility, or their strength. It's helped them create more power and hit the ball further, which has only been fantastic. So I've been working online for, again, 6 months at least, been out here in the States since October. But golfers are just enjoying the fact that they're doing stuff different, but they're also able to take what they've got and make it better. And sometimes it's just simple stuff that they've not been doing for a while or they've not done before.
Yeah, just maybe neglected a bit. I'll put obviously links down to that in the podcast, so if anyone wants to check that out, we'll do that. Yeah, also a little question, how does, obviously you are over in the States now, and the difference with golf over there. I mean, we talked about obviously they drink more beer on the course, but at the same time, a lot of amateur golfers, particularly that are wanting to go out onto the tour. I mean, again, my brother actually went out there to the IMG Academy, and you know, there's all the colleges and things, and it's just like the facilities seem brilliant. I just wondered what your thoughts were on the difference with golf over there, really, in the States to UK.
I mean, we could start bringing up the Ryder Cup scores and how many we've won compared to them.
Oh, I'm not saying they're better. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. I was just going to say they can keep the facilities better, but
Yeah.
about Ryder Cup scores. No, in all seriousness, I think from a fitness standpoint, when we look at what the US has capabilities-wise, they're so far ahead of the UK in terms of training, down for the fact of a lot of the training stuff that they deliver tends to take maybe 3-5 years to get to the UK before it starts to be implemented on a greater scale. And I don't want to say it's not an issue for the UK because, like I say, we're creating golfers that can perform on an elite level. But you always see that the UK golfers that turn pro that start to make it onto the PGA or the European Tour, they do migrate out to the US. Yes, okay, they have the availability to be playing longer throughout the year because of better weather seasons, but they also get the advantage of the coaches that they have access to, like you said, the IMG stuff. The night golf schools. I'm hoping that I can get out to a night golf school in July in Massachusetts so I can start to work with the guys and see how they're training and kind of see if I can have any input and learn from them more than anything and what they're doing. But we always see it where most golfers in the UK are limited with the specialists that they can go and see.
Yeah.
They also then find that the specialists that they do go and see have such a large base that their touch time might not be relatively what they're looking for. So all of a sudden it's a case of, well, where can I go? And the next option does become maybe online, or it does become, if it needs to be one-on-one, you go somewhere and you have to pay the fees that you need to pay to be able to see the specialist that you want to see or need to see, or you have to then look at going abroad. And that's just what we're seeing with obviously the pros and stuff, that they're needing to go over to the US. But no, the facilities over here are absolutely fantastic. They've got an eye on things, and they're always evolving. I think they are, I would say, bar too much of an increase, I think they are better than the UK in terms of training. I know that obviously Russia and China obviously have great training facilities for their Olympic athletes. I'm not sure what they're like for more the general population. I think they're probably very much like the old school bodybuilders in Russia, where they've got the metal plates, bars, rustic old school bodybuilding gyms. China, I'm not too sure because I haven't ever been or seen anything, so I couldn't comment. But I think US are probably leading on the fitness scale for athletes, and certainly for people that are wanting to look at kind of evolving into that role. They are the leaders in that.
Yeah, like I said, it'd be great to see some more of that coming over to the UK. I think you're getting some great kind of golf academies now. Smaller things in the UK, but like you say, maybe if the fitness aspect and things like that starts progressing over here as well. It's just kind of you've got everything in one place then. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add to that. I think we've got some really good information from that, though. Hopefully it's pointing people in some good directions as well with what they can be doing.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would cover more of now would just be the nutrition side of things. And I know we kind of got onto the subject, but nutrition plays a huge part in golf. And it's often overlooked. Like you say, in the UK, it's all about the bacon sandwich in the morning. You might go out, you may take a banana. If you don't have a banana, it might be a Mars bar, and you play your 18 holes. And I've always seen that people will do well for maybe the first 9 holes. They might get something at the halfway house, and they'll do well for the first 3 or 4 holes of the back 9. And then it's the last 4 or 5 holes where they're like really struggling. Scores start to get worse, and they just don't feel like they've got the capacity to keep playing at the level that they were. And I looked at what people should be consuming on a golf course during their round. And I was actually, this was quite early on into the nutrition side of things that I was learning, and how much people need to be consuming. And we're looking piece of fruit, protein bar, or a protein shake, maybe just for like ease of access of having some protein in there. You're going to want to get a couple of pieces of fruit in, to be honest, some on the front, some on the back. Nuts, certainly having a handful, 2 handfuls of nuts in there. You might have a sports drink for the back kind of 4 or 5 holes. Before your round, you're looking at certainly getting a good source of protein in, some carbs and some veggies in. After your round, exactly the same thing, get a good source of protein, carbs and veggies in, some fats with both meals. And when you actually look at what people consume compared to what they should be consuming, it's very, very little. We can talk about hydration as well, and water. And people need to be consuming at least 2 litres of water out on the golf course. Like you said, your brother, the caddy, he knows how much water he's carrying. I think as soon as you start looking at going into hotter countries, you're looking at 3-4 litres of water around.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if people are just consuming a bacon sandwich and a coffee before, maybe a piece of fruit or a Mars bar as they're going round, and 500 millilitres of water, I think we're nowhere near where we need to be able to stay focused, but also be able to swing the club at 100 miles an hour or more, and be able to do that time after time for 4 or 5 hours.
That's the thing, because I think sometimes you think, golf could be seen as obviously quite a leisurely sport, and it is to an extent. You're having a nice walk round, but you're out there for quite a while, and it's surprising, like you say, how many calories and things you're actually burning off while doing that. Needed to
when I was kind of, again, like when I was new to the nutrition side of the industry and looking at what people needed to be consuming, almost like a little social experiment I did on myself was I watched how many times I came off the golf course, and when I got home after my round, I had to sleep in the middle of the day. And one thing that I always noticed was when I didn't eat enough or when I didn't hydrate enough, I needed to have a nap because I was tired. Whereas when I actually made sure I was hydrated, when I actually made sure I was fed enough, I didn't need to sleep. So my recovery was better. And the nap was just down to the fact of obviously tiredness, low blood sugar levels, dehydration, that kind of stuff. And they obviously get back to some form of normality after 24 hours. But it was straight after the round, having something to eat, having water, drinking water as I'm going round, kept me focused, but kept me healthy after the round, and recovery was better.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting as well. My first time, and when I really noticed it anyway, because I think in general I'm fairly good with staying hydrated and things and my nutrition. But I had my first 36 hole competition, so it was the club championship. And before it, I was like, all right, I've maybe played 2 rounds in a day before, but not competition wise. So I'm going to really prepare. I mean, I should anyway, maybe, but then I actually prepared, and I noticed, my energy levels, even though I was playing a lot more, was a lot better because I was prepared with things like nuts and everything like that. And I mean, you're seeing more products as well now, I think, like Max Golf Protein and things like that. You've got golf specific products. So it's something that people are obviously, again, becoming more aware of.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to go down the rabbit hole of the nutrition industry and the supplement industry because it can be an over-marketed product to the point where it doesn't have greater benefits than other products. So I'll always be wary of people, what they're putting into their bodies and making sure that it's researched and tested and approved. So I had a case last year, and the golf that I was working with wanted to be taking a protein supplement that was going to allow him to continue to build muscle relatively quickly because the calorie content. So I researched the supplement company, and it has to have the sport specific approved label on the company. Otherwise, if you end up playing in a professional competition and you do get tested, you could potentially fail a test and you could be obviously banned from playing the sport. So I'd always be wary of what people are putting in their bodies. There's been countless issues throughout history where people have been taking supplements that are technically classed as approved because it's got the seal, but when they test the product itself, it does have stuff contained in there that it doesn't say on the label. So I'd always give caution to what people put in their bodies, but it's certainly something that people can look at in terms of having a protein shake or a protein bar on the course, because we're starting to get into that era now where people are understanding what is in food and what we should be consuming from food, which is only going to help us improve and play better. And protein is certainly one of those things that we can be consuming.
Sure. I think we've covered quite a bit there. And like I say, obviously they can find out more information. I know your Instagram is at Elite Personal Training Academy.
Yeah.
Can link through there, and I'll put links again in the podcast so they can get to your website and things.
Yeah, I always tell everyone, don't ever be afraid to reach out. If you've got any questions, if you've got any issues or anything, just ping them over to me on Instagram. It's probably the easiest place to get me because that's the only place that I don't want to say it's the only place I'm professional because it's really not. It's the easiest place that I spend a lot of my time on through all the social medias. So you'll get the quickest response, but you'll get the most efficient response on there as well. And it's just a case of the information's out there, but it's being able to get through and getting the right information for that person at that right time.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we actually ended up in this conversation, wasn't it? We were talking and doing the flexibility stuff. So yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks again. I hope a lot of people have got something from this. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, please remember to subscribe if you enjoyed this. I really appreciate it. See you on the next episode. Thanks.